only one lens for both street and product photography. I've been a street photographer for over a decade, shooting unpredictable subjects in fading light all across the world, which strangely taught me 3 lessons about product photography. One genre is for art, the other is for commerce, and mixing the two isn't everyone's cup of tea. After all, would you rather be Maya or Leibovitz? Today let's walk through a simple product shoot for a lens I'm selling, using 3 focal lengths already in my street kit: 35, 50, and 85mm. You can make any of these work for you, but one is my favorite. Hello, I'm Jack, a scientist by day, street photographer by night, and this is Bokeh Therapy. Photography is not my job, but I have made money because of photography. About $50,000. This isn't some get-rich-quick scheme. I've shot events, been a backup to the backup shooter, and sold a few prints. But the main way I make money is how most enthusiasts make money: buying and selling used gear. Cameras and lenses to watches and sneakers. I shoot everything with a minimal kit, just a lens I already own and one single light. Thank you to Zhiyun for providing the Molus X60 and a 10% discount code Zhiyun10CYZ to demonstrate today's lighting setups. This video is not sponsored. Zhiyun had no input into its production, and as always, I have final edit. I'm selling this lens, but it doesn't mean I'm switching from Sony. I might just need the extra funds for something that's being announced next week. An afterthought of a thrift auction turned into 100,000 negatives, an award-winning documentary, and an endless list of unanswerable questions. Why so many photos of strangers? How did no one else find out? When an artist passes, what happens to their work, and who's allowed to profit? Vivian Maier is just another casualty of art versus commerce, the age-old debate. But after looking through dozens of her black and white street portraits, hidden from the spotlight for over half a century, I only had one question: how did she keep going? Silhouettes and shadows are a big part of my street work, but don't translate too well to product photography. Backlit shots create drama, mood, and mystery, but buyers need to see the product clearly, flaws and all, especially on the secondhand market. An 85mm works well for these shots because there's no distortion. The product looks exactly how it's going to look in hand, so there's no surprises for the buyer. But the lighting is just as important. I like to find the biggest window in my house and put the lens in front of it. Make sure the brand name, the logo, any details are very well lit, not backlit. Front lighting is fine, but you might get some distracting reflections, so I like to use side lighting. But you can always use an LED light to provide a kicker. For a natural look, I go for a warmer tone, about 2700 Kelvin. I just set it to 1% intensity. You can see it's already very bright. If you blow it straight at the lens, it's way too bright. I'm going to bounce it off, so it's a bit of a nice little glow, just to add a bit of warmth, a bit of a natural look to the product shot. If you take that light away, it's still a pretty nice look, still a pretty naturalistic look, but with a bit of a kicker, it just adds a bit of extra something. The Zhiyun X60 is both CCT 2700 to 6500 Kelvin, normal everyday colors, and RGB, crazy YouTuber colors. You control it using 2 dials. The X60 can be charged with a power adapter, USB-C power delivery, or the battery grip, which is my favorite. It has 15-minute runtime at 100% power, but I never use it at 100%. It's very symmetrical even with the battery grip attached, so you can position it in different places without needing a separate light stand. It's only at 1% intensity right now, but it's important to have 60 watts in reserve. More about why later. And all I'm going for is one side of the product a little brighter than the other. A solid bit of visual contrast that I capture in camera. Now, if you really wanted to go crazy, you can go for a more RGB look. Make a neon pink if you want to. Absolutely crazy, but you can give a little hint of that. It's more of a YouTuber look. Product shots look great on 85mm, but there can be too much subject separation, even when stopped down, when you need everything in focus. Yes, everything looks naturalistic on 85, but you need quite a bit of working distance between the lens and the camera. You might just not have as much space to make it work, so it's not my go-to. Rolling Stone magazine's go-to was Annie Leibovitz. Then came Vogue, Vanity Fair, and Leibovitz became synonymous with high-concept celebrity shoots. But Leibovitz has had her fair share of critics. No one critiques why she keeps shooting, just how she keeps shooting. We now expect art to be mixed with commerce by default, which is why Vivian Maier's story struck a nerve. Rolleiflexes and film can't have been cheap, and photos of bins and sidewalks surely couldn't have paid the bills. Why does she keep shooting? How does she keep shooting? If it weren't for that auction all those years later, her work would have never come into focus. There's not much in focus when you shoot wide open, so we need more than that one visual trick for flat lay product shots. You have to stop down because any text or brand logos need to be sharp. I shoot flat lay product shots at my desk, and you can see that the camera is mounted to a stand. This is just a very normal stand. It's the one from Elgato. It's the mic stand that every YouTuber, every streamer has, and I've got it 90 degrees to give it the most amount of strength, and it's mounted to an Arca Swiss clamp, which clamps onto my camera on a 35mm. I'm going to shoot this shot of the lens. Wide enough to get more context, but not so tight that you need to mount it on a 10-foot C-stand. My home office, like all our home offices, is tight on space. There's very little natural light, and that's why a 60-watt LED is so handy. So this is my flat lay lighting setup without any lights on, and you can see there's a bit of daylight peeking through the door here, but really is not enough to light the scene. If I close it, it's almost complete darkness, and you might say, well, why aren't you using daylight like the shot before? Well, the reason is daylight might fade, and you might only have the time to do product shots later at night, and that's where the 60 watt of the Molus X60 comes in very handy. This is it at 4%. You can already see that the ISO dropped from 51,000 down to 4,000 in camera, and I've got the reflector on here with a bit of diffusion, and I'm bouncing it against the wall. This is where the 60 watt is very, very powerful and very useful, because as you bounce it off the wall, that intensity is dropping. So now it's at 7%. I'm going to up this to 50%, not even at 100%, just so that the light can bounce and give it a bit of a soft directional look. You can add a reflector to the X60 with or without diffusion, and it transforms from a tiny COB light source to the whole area of the wall bouncing the light back. There's still some harsh shadows here, so I'll put the intensity even more and bounce it from a little bit further away. This obviously isn't a professional setup, so I'd be very keen to hear from product photographers in the comments below about how this can be improved. Filling the frame with textures and pops of color are all tricks of the trade for street photography that still work for product photography. And I like to fill the frame here with a few different textures. If you film or shoot on a desk, there's some natural leading lines. Natural textures like wood and leather are a nice counterbalance for black metallic lenses, and I like to block out each corner of the frame without making it look too symmetrical. You see all of this is being lit from one single light, and right now it's 100%. That's why the 60 watt is so powerful. It's a nice establishing shot, but it can't be your only product photo. Your item won't sell with only a flat lay on 35mm, but it's not the lens's fault. It's because of misdirection. Street debris and run-down houses. Was Maya shining a light on the less fortunate, or was she one of them? Does she see herself as a tragic in the making, another casualty of art without commerce? It's easy for a photo to play tricks on our emotions, and I'm no stranger to manufactured melancholy. But what if Maya wasn't looking for anything more? If art for commerce's sake is just to make more art, being a nanny gave her all the freedom to document the streets. She could have been just shooting for herself, not anybody else. And after 100,000 beautiful shots, who am I to say she didn't succeed? It doesn't take much to project my own insecurities into these frames, because nothing beats a good story. In his book, .com Secrets, Russell Brunson talks about the basic ingredients of online sales being 1, grabbing the audience's attention, and 2, showing the value of your product with story. A beautiful flat lay shot might grab their attention to begin with, but it's the detailed shots of your gear that tell the story. Buyers need to see if there are scratches or blemishes, and for this you'll need to get close. With a 35, wide-angle distortion and unwanted shadows come into play. There's also no visual hierarchy. Everything looks equally important on a flat lay, and that's why a 50mm is my favorite lens for product photography. I've moved my camera down to desk height this time, and with the 50 even stopped down, you can add foreground and background elements for some visual hierarchy. For this final setup, we're starting in complete darkness. This time I'm going to blast the light pointed against the wall. It's probably not quite bright enough to light the whole scene, but even if I up it to 100% intensity, still a little bit too directional. The front looks a little bit too dark, and that's where the reflector, which intensifies the beam, comes in handy. You blast it off the ceiling, raises the brightness of the whole scene, and now you're getting good even lighting all the way across, and it's all just coming from one light. The narrative for secondhand camera gear has to either be it's still unboxed, brand new, untouched, or that it has been used, but you know what you're doing. It's been well cared for, and they're getting a great deal on a reluctant sale. You want some evidence in the shot of the gear being used with enough detail to show its condition. I've got some leading lines here. I've got some interesting accessories, a white backdrop. This is in case of white book that acts as a mini reflector, if you like, bouncing a light back onto the back of the lens. This is a lens made to be used, not just sit on the shelf. The better I can make this shot look, the better buyers will feel about their purchase, and hopefully you'll get fewer low-ball offers. My work will never be as good as Maya or Leibovitz, but it doesn't mean I have to choose between art and commerce. All the modern street photographers have side hustles, teaching at colleges, speaking engagements, not just selling prints and photo books. For me, it's YouTube and product photography allow me to reinvest back into the art. Thank you to Julia Mansour for supporting the Fujifilm video. I couldn't do this without the community. All I want to do is keep playing the infinite game. Depending on the announcement next week, the next level of my game might involve Nikon's Z6 III, which I'll be covering in the next video here when it's ready to go. I'm Jack, trying to capture the peace in each moment.